I hope you saved something for us here. What has anything changed in 12 hours?
Well, I know when I was on furlough from the Tribune, you were getting all my stuff. I could not report anything in print, so everything was exclusive to Greg Sharp and Ben McLaughlin. Now I did have to write some stuff for the paper, and I spoke to a good source a couple days ago, and he laid out the current plan, and he cautioned. He said, look, it's already changed since Monday, so I can't promise any of this is how it's going to be, but this is what we're looking at now. 10 games, 3 to 5 off weeks in case teams have to quarantine themselves, and be off for a while, and front-loading the divisional games, so East versus East and West versus West in those first, probably essentially 6 games that might last over 7 or 8 weeks, and they're looking at September 5th to start. He also said there's been no talk of spring ball, and there's been no talk of some kind of bubble, which, God bless my buddy Stuart Mandel at The Athletic, he's been talking, I think, about how to bubble college athletes. I think we all know that's not happening.
Okay, so the SEC is going to go late September. You still think September 5th? And the ACC is doing away with divisions. They're just going to get the top 2 teams. What about the divisions? Are they still going to hold in the Big Ten?
Yeah, Greg, this has been one of the interesting aspects of this. Every league looks at it differently. I mean, the Big 12 is moving up. They're moving up to week 0. So they want to start earlier. The Big 10, I mean, my guy clearly says what's important to them is to have these extra weeks built in where they don't have to, have every team playing. That's also smart from a TV perspective, right? I mean, if you can have teams playing 10 games but do it over 14 or even 15 weeks, if you can offer, 4 or 5 Big Ten games a week, that would obviously be great. So I think that's the smartest philosophy. I don't know if the SEC is doing it its way because there are more outbreaks in the South right now, and they just feel like they need more time to try to get it under control. But it is interesting that, you've got the Ivy League that cancels, you've got the ACC that's going 11, Big Ten 10. I mean, they all have their different thoughts, and I hate to say, is this all just a total futile exercise? Is there going to be college football at all? But as my source said, if you don't at least plan for it, you got no chance.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Notre Dame wraps into the ACC this year. Are we reading too much into that? Is this a one-time only thing? You're pretty well connected with the Irish.
Oh, I would think it's definitely one-time only. I mean, Notre Dame has this great situation. I've seen some people call it friends with benefits. I think that's a pretty good line. Notre Dame gets the best of it because all of its other sports, they don't have to concoct schedules for the tennis team and the women's basketball team and all that. So they've got this great league, the ACC, for all of its other sports, which makes it much easier. And Notre Dame fancies itself as an ACC-type school. They think they're sort of like, Virginia and North Carolina and Wake Forest and a lot of these strong academic schools. And then they have this good situation in football where they play 6 ACC opponents every year. So that means, often they'll get Clemson or Florida State, NC State, Carolina, pretty good teams. But then they also get to go out and play SC and Michigan State and Purdue and Northwestern and teams like that. So, if you're Notre Dame, you have a great situation. You get all this extra money from NBC for TV revenue. Why would you give that up? I don't think it's powerful enough to say, oh, well, now they get to play in the ACC championship game, so they can play in a 13th game. I just don't think that's enough. Could there be a situation where they end up playing, 8 ACC games? I could certainly see that. But obviously they still want to play Navy and USC, and they want to play a school in Texas and a school on the East Coast because they feel like that helps their recruiting, and it really makes their alums happy. It's obviously a national school, and they want to, they want their alums in San Antonio or Los Angeles to be able to see them every now and then.
Yeah, no doubt. Teddy Greenstein with us from the Chicago Tribune. One of the big stories in your area was the passing yesterday of longtime Illinois coach Lou Henson. I don't know how much interaction you had with him, but it certainly seems like he was a pretty good gentleman, a pretty good poster for that program.
That's right, Greg. That's a good word, gentleman. And I ended up writing a little column. I went into the Wayback Machine. So in 1994, I was 21 years old and a reporter at Sports Illustrated. And I was heading out on my first road trip, my first assignment. to go around to, I think it was Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and do some interviews for our college basketball preview issue. So our editor at the time said, hey, when you go to Illinois, try to ask Lou about his son, Lou Jr. I said, oh, okay, well, what should I ask? He said, well, Lou Jr. died in a car accident 2 years ago. I said, okay. I didn't really know Lou at the time. Had maybe interviewed him in group settings a couple times, so that felt like that was going to be pretty uncomfortable. I asked Lou about it, and he couldn't have been nicer. And he said, hey, do you want to jump in my car and we can drive to the gravesite? And I said, absolutely. And honestly, I don't remember much about that, but what I remember was we got back. We were in the parking lot of the basketball arena. And he says, wait here for 1 second. And he runs inside to his office, and he comes back, and he's signing his book. And he ends up signing his book, and he says, thank you for asking about Lou Jr. And, wish me the best of luck. And I just always remember that. One, it struck me how nice he was to me. And two, folks who lose a child, I'm sure a lot don't want to talk about it, but some I know really do want to talk about it. And when it's that child's birthday, they want you to say, happy birthday. It happened to my cousin passed away at a young age, and his parents really want to talk about their son. So I think it's a good reminder to people that, yeah, there are a lot of couples out there, even if they lose a child, they want that child to be remembered.
Well, good story. Teddy Greenstein again with us from the Chicago Tribune. All right, I need some help from you. I have been a Sports Illustrated subscriber probably for 30-some years. I got a renewal notice in the mail the other day, and usually it's a quick sign it, put the credit card on there, and send her back in. I'm struggling this time. I don't know whether I'm going to keep that. Am I loony here?
You and I didn't set this up before, so I don't think you know my story, but I mean, I became a sports writer because of Sports Illustrated. I really was not interested in reading To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye, and I used Cliff Notes to get me through all those kind of lit classes. But I read SI for pleasure, read it cover to cover, probably starting at maybe 13, 14, 15, and that's what made me love it. So fast forward to, in the last few years, and I've had so many friends who've been laid off by Sports Illustrated. Fortunately, my buddy Michael Rosenberg is still there. They've hired Pat Forty. Tom Verducci is probably the best baseball writer who's ever lived. So it's not completely without talent, but it's so stripped down. And I hate what they've done with the website. So finally, I get the same card as you in the mail, and I've been a subscriber since at some point in the 80s. And, I actually called and said, hi, is there going to be a discounted rate because there are fewer issues? And I think they said no. And then the next thing I know, I had just canceled, kind of like that. Like I was actually, I think, ready to negotiate a little bit and maybe keep it. And the next thing I know, there's no SI. And it really actually was a dilemma for me as well. Like, do you, quote unquote, punish the current owners who have completely ruined the magazine by not subscribing? Or are you then still hurting your colleagues who rely on subscriptions to survive? It's a very tough call. All I know is I no longer subscribe, and there's so much other stuff to read out there, The Athletic, ESPN, a million publications, so I can't say I miss it, but I did it with some sadness.
Yeah, it's probably been 30-plus years. I remember growing up, and my buddies and I would argue over whether that was the better thing or the sporting news. They loved the sporting news. It gave you a lot of box scores and a lot of statistical information. Right. I wanted the profile pieces. I wanted to learn about these people, and that's what drew me to Sports Illustrated, plus the photography was fantastic. Yes. But I'm with you. I mean, one, they stripped down how many issues they're doing per year, and they didn't give you a break in the rate, so you're paying more for less. And then now I don't know half the writers when I open up a magazine, so I've struggled with it. You probably just sealed it for me right there.
Yeah, and they give it away for free on SI.com.
Yeah.
So when I want to read Tom Verducci or Pat Forty, it's right there. So, their management has been terrible. I can't say much for our management, but we do need to all try to support each other because print journalism, man, not exactly going so well.